Hello, my name is Juan Manuel Galeazzi, and I'm a researcher here in the Department of Experimental Psychology in the University of Oxford. Our brains are composed by billions of cells that we call neurons, and these neurons are connected with each other, and we call these connections synapses. So these synapses is what neurons use to communicate with each other. And one neuron can have as many as thousands of connections to other neurons. And the way they communicate is by sending electrical pulses and chemical signals through these synaptic connections. So basically you have millions of neurons communicating simultaneously and sending messages to each other to either activate or silence another group of neurons. So there's a popular analogy that is used by Edelman comparing these different patterns of neural activity to an orchestra that has many, many instruments playing individually, and yet they can get coordinated to create beautiful melodies. So it's from this coordinated activity that the brain starts forming new connections, and these connections can be either strengthened, for example, to form new memories or to learn new things, or these connections can also be weakened over time depending on how often they're used. So the more these neurons fire together and communicate with each other, the more they get connected, forming a network. So to use an analogy, it's a bit like us with our friends. The more we interact and spend time with somebody, the stronger the bond becomes. On the other hand, there might be people that you encounter randomly or interact with them in very few occasions, and you won't be necessarily developing a strong connection with them. So basically, from all these networks of neurons communicating with each other and changing the strength of their connections, it's how all these complex mental processes arise, like learning, for example. So it's also what allows us to understand the world around us through our senses, as well as allowing us to control our bodies and interact with the world. And it's precisely from this interaction with the environment that we start learning about the world and forming associations where we learn about our actions and the effect that our actions have in the world. So to give another example, if you do something that leads to a rewarding or pleasant consequence, your brain will be more likely to learn that's something perhaps you should repeat. And you will start learning to predict that action will lead to something pleasurable. And similarly, if you make a mistake or a particular action leads to something unpleasant, then your brain will try to avoid this behavior. So our brains are continuously changing through our lives based on our experiences, like I mentioned previously, and it's precisely this ability that the brain has for adapting and reorganize its connections that we call brain plasticity or neural plasticity. And unfortunately, it seems that neuroplasticity in certain areas of the brain, as well as some cognitive and behavioral functions, seem to decline as we get older. Although, on the other hand, there's also recent evidence showing that new neurons seem to be generated in certain areas of the adult brain, for example, in the dentate gyrus in the hippocampus. But there are also other studies that seem to question this claim and seem to say that neurogenesis, which is how we call this process by which new neurons get generated, they claim that it's actually extremely rare in the adult human brain. So basically, this shows that there's still a lot of things to be learned about how the brain changes as we age. But it seems to be that there's promising research trying to help us better understand this or even slow down some of these processes. So in terms of the big question, is knowledge dangerous? So I would say that knowledge in and of itself is not dangerous. Knowledge is about learning how things work, is about understanding the universe. Is what we do with that knowledge and how we use it that can be either beneficial or detrimental to our society. I mean, think about the internet, nuclear energy, genetics, artificial intelligence, just to mention a few. They can all be used to improve our society, but at the same time, they can also be used in harmful and dangerous ways. So again, it's not knowledge itself that is dangerous, it's how we use and apply that knowledge that can be dangerous. What's certainly more dangerous than anything else is its ignorance. So making uninformed decisions, not knowing or understanding how things work in the universe doesn't really lead to anything good. So ignorance won't allow us to improve our world or our society in any meaningful way. So quite the opposite. On the other hand, knowledge used wisely, it's the thing that has allowed us to live longer, to cure diseases, to explore the universe, and hopefully it will help us to take better care of our planet.